Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me down there in Tequila, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of Notre alumni, Matt Green, is here, host of Georgia Voice of College Football. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
So I think you're gonna like this. Before we jumped on here, Matt Green. We've been watching like movies that I just have like missed for whatever reason. Like I never saw Kingpin. I don't know if you've seen that one, the Fairley Brothers.
I have. I saw that in probably the last year or two, actually.
Well, that makes me feel better because it's like one of those classics that just I never sat down and watched. Sat down and watched it. It's a good movie. Good time. Enjoyed it. Never seen Ace Ventura though either. And I watched that. Yeah. Never saw it. Never on the radar.
What? You're not I don't even know. You're not a child of the 90s if you never saw Ace Ventura. I don't know. You missed a cultural phenomenon, sir. You missed the whole movement.
Look, I missed it. I understand. I don't have a good reason. Like, I've seen Dumb and Dumber 9,000 times. Like, I like Jim Carrey a lot.
The Mask?
Like, I've seen The Mask. I gotta tell you,
man.
The Mask.
Jim Carrey was my childhood, like, for real.
I could take it or leave it with The Mask.
I'll be honest. I'm sure The Mask hasn't aged great. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. But
well, we also watched Me, Myself, and Irene, which I hadn't seen either. Solid. It's a good time.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's okay. But Ace Ventura is pretty funny. There were some audible laughs here out of me, Matt Green. So I got back into the Ace Ventura phase here. But yeah, never saw it. And my wife was like, this has to change, because she's way more on top of that kind of stuff. And just like if I passively, I'm just like, oh yeah, I guess I just never saw that. She's like, what? Like, isn't it funny? Like, I'm sure you have those movies too, where they, in the movie, not to spoiler alert for this 1994 classic, but there's like a scene where the Mission Impossible music plays, and
everyone's seen Ace Ventura.
Well, everyone has seen Ace Ventura, but I've never seen any of the Mission Impossible movies. Like, it was something that I just thought about too, where I was like, I never saw any of them.
You're talking about when he's like going around the snowflakes tank or whatever?
Yeah, and they're playing, and he's pretending to be like Mission Impossible.
No, he's pretending to. Oh shoot! I'm thinking the Ace Ventura 2. Never mind.
Are there two?
You don't even know about Ace Ventura 2. Oh my god, yeah. But he does.
Wait, does Snowflake take it again?
He has
Snowflake
like a
can't get away.
Trek. Yeah, he does like the Star Trek. There's something on the wing. Something like yeah. Yeah. There. What happens? A bat is like some rare white bat is like kidnapped or something. He has to go to Africa. But
what's better, 1 or 2? Is it worth exploring number 2?
Absolutely. When Nature Calls. That's Ace Ventura 2. Yeah, I think it starts. Yeah, it starts with the whole cliffhanger scene. You know, the opening of the movie Cliffhanger.
Never saw it.
Oh man, well, spoiler alert. It's like action packed from the start about climbing mountains. But yeah, there's a tragedy that happens like minutes into the movie, and then the movie goes from there. But Ace Ventura kind of parodies it a little bit. But it's funny you mentioned a movie though, because I actually watched Interstellar the other night.
Never
Have you seen
saw
that
it either.
One? So that one, I remember watching this thing with Jerry Seinfeld where he was like, someone introduced him as like the funniest comedian in the world. And then he like did his set or whatever. And then he like came off and like chewed the guy out. Like, never introduced me as like the funniest guy. Because then people are like, oh, how funny is this guy? Really? You know, it's like you kind of put him up on a pedestal. People just told me it was like the greatest movie ever. And so I'm watching this movie. It's like, is this the greatest movie ever? Like, it was a good movie, but like, I don't know. I don't know if it's the greatest movie ever, but I was entertained.
How long is it?
What's up?
How long is it?
It was a long one. It was like, but I will say it was a long movie. I started it late and I did not fall asleep. So, you know, that right there, that tells you a lot. But yeah, it was like over like 2.5 hours, I think.
I'm looking at 250 here. 2 hours.
Okay.
That's pushing it. That's pushing it, man.
No, I'm with you. I would say, and Oppenheimer was a Christopher Nolan movie too, and I don't know. You want to look that one up? That had to be over 3 hours. I feel like that
Guess what?
movie just
Didn't see it.
dragged. That
Didn't see
movie
it.
dragged on and on. Like I did not understand the Oppenheimer hype. I'm not here to just bash Christopher Nolan here, one of the great directors of our time.
Yeah, it's 3
But
hours long.
okay, yeah, Oppenheimer didn't get it. Interstellar was an excellent movie. I will say that. But greatest movie of all time? I don't know. I guess it's your preference.
But you know what's so dumb about like my brain is that like a 3 hour movie, I'm like, oh, how do you do that? And then I could watch like Bosch 3 episodes back to back to back, and it's 3 hours, and I'm like, awesome! What a way to spend 3 hours of my time. That flew by. Love catching up with Bosch.
That's part of it. Is like there's all these shows everybody's watching. I'm like, what do you have? It's like 7 seasons. It's like I don't. This is like hundreds of hours to dedicate. It's like, but there's like a movie people liked from 2007. It's like, I'll put a couple hours into that. Check it out.
Yeah, I mean it's also spread out now that like you don't get to like Game of Thrones is obviously one of those, but I mean Yellow Jackets is one of my wife and I's favorites, and that's coming back on Showtime for season 3 because the strike and everything delayed a lot of stuff, and that's finally back after a year and a half. It's like Lost, but a newer version. Oh, now that one, love Lost. That was a great time, but yeah, I don't. It's just weird because like there are shows like Mayor of Kingstown. I'd love to talk to somebody about Mayor of Kingstown. Love that show. No one watched Mayor of Kingstown. I think they're getting another season. It's Jeremy Renner at the lead, Taylor Sheridan type show. It's a great show. No one's watching it. Like it's just me. Like I just imagine where I'm like I'm putting in the work.
Yeah, that's just where we are. Just the there's no more mass media.
No.
Everything's just sectioned off.
There's no water cooler like, did you watch so and so? Like I don't like no, because we're all watching different stuff, or we're watching the same stuff just at completely different times. We're like, no spoilers. I'll get to it this summer. We're taking a week off, and
I'm actually only on season 3. It's in season 5 right now. Yeah, something like that, which I can't hate on. I'm behind on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just the way it is, man. But as folks can tell, we have officially entered the off season here, the college football off season. Matt Green, we got a ways to go, man. We got what 7 months, about 7 months until college football is back here. We got spring stuff that we'll obviously have to get through and get into some recaps and some season reviews and all kinds of other fun off season conversations that we do each and every year at this time. But first things first, Matt Green, dog bites that I want to pick your brain on. Biggest positional improvement for the Dogs that you want to see in 2025 is what, sir?
Well, I think the wide receiver room is the easy answer. That's the one everybody talked about, leading the nation in drops and all of that. But we've kind of addressed that. They brought in the 2 big-time transfers, Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas, and then a couple of big-time freshmen. So you feel like that room is going to be, addressed and going to be better than, and a couple of those guys are off to the NFL. Well, we'll see if they get drafted. I assume Arian Smith's going to run like a 4.2 something and get drafted based on his upside. But hey, he's a tool. He's an interesting weapon you can use if he can catch the ball consistently. He could be really dangerous. But I think the group that kind of gets forgotten about from 2024 is the offensive line. I think the offensive line was really underwhelming for the most part this season, especially when they went up against some of those better defensive lines in the country. Other than Texas, the 2 games against Texas, Georgia, those are 2 of their better teams running the football. But the passing wise, they didn't do much either time when they faced Texas. But I mean, you look at the left tackle position, Monroe Freeling is a guy who's got some of the most experience, and he didn't have the best showing in that Notre Dame game. Ernest Green, lost his starting spot after getting hurt, missing a few games last year. And also looking underwhelming when he was healthy. So, he's probably the right tackle. I guess whoever's better, it ends up being the left tackle because both of those guys have played on the left and the right side. You also have Bo Hughley, who's a big time prospect a couple years ago. He's in his 3rd year. I imagine he's kind of the backup at either of those spots. But then Ja Jackson is the one that everyone is just so excited to see like this basketball player. Like this dude is an amazing athlete. So 6'9", whatever he is, 350, like just an insane athlete. So once I saw him play basketball, I was like, wow, I really want to see this guy on the offensive line. And he has played football before. He just it's been a few years since playing football before 2024. And then the guard position, Micah Morris has played starter snaps at times. So, I think you know what you're getting with him. But Daniel Calhoun, he's one of the more big time recruits from a year or two ago. He looks like he's going to be at one of those guard positions. I would assume right guard, since Micah Morris has played some left guard. And then Drew Bobo, I think, is going to be the starter at center. So, there's a lot of inexperience on that offensive line. And, maybe you have some unproven guys that were big time 4-stars coming out, Nair Daniels, Marcus Easley, Uwini. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, Michael Uwini. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but a couple inside and outside offensive linemen. Juan Gaston, that dude was creating a buzz at the All-American practices, like with how he moves at I think he's 6'8", 350 or something like that. Just some giant human beings Georgia has in this offensive line room. And then Cortez Smith, one of your boys from Parkview, the true freshman in this class. I think he's projected as a center. So, maybe he gives Bobo a run for his money, or maybe he's that backup at center. But, there's a lot of unproven guys in this room, but you got to like some of the upside of what, if you're going based on high school recruiting rankings, there's a lot of talent in this group.
So what are you more confident in, the receivers being better in 25 or the offensive line being better in 2025?
I would say probably the offensive line, simply because the kinds of players that Georgia recruits. It's like you're replacing a lot of guys, but I personally think both of those rooms are going to be improved from a year ago. But I think the offensive line is just, you expect Georgia to be able to run the football better. And I think there's going to be an emphasis on this team kind of getting back to what they do, being more physical, because, I don't even know what it was, 130 yards a game or something on the ground, not defensively, but rushing offensively per game, by far Kirby Smart, the worst rushing offense under Kirby Smart. So it's that needs to be improved in 2020. And the running back depth gets blamed for a lot of that. But I mean, I think we've seen constantly, you can put a pretty good, just an average running back behind a good offensive line, and they can make some plays. The running game starts first and foremost at the offensive line.
I think it's kind of interesting because there's the most amount of pressure on this Georgia offense in a lot of different ways, but I think it wasn't surprising. I mean, leading the country in drops was surprising for Georgia last year, but it wasn't surprising the receiver struggle, especially after losing Ra and Colby. But I mean, even before the year, I think we talked about it. It's just there wasn't a lot of guys that could scare you on the outside, and Arian Smith needed to take the leap for them to really consistently for Georgia to really break through there. Dylan Bell had to be better than what we saw the previous year, and obviously getting a lot out of Ra and Colby. But I mean, I don't think there was a lot of preseason buzz in terms of, oh yeah, the Georgia receivers, they're going to replace Lab McConkey and company. They'll be just fine there. It was more of Carson Beck can make this work. Carson Beck can get these guys to where they need to be. Carson Beck can kind of elevate the receivers. I think what caught everybody by surprise is and you kind of touched on this, is Georgia, it's not like they've had a drop in offensive line recruiting. It's not when they had the left tackle situation that they did against Ole Miss, and then obviously making the change for the Tennessee game, and everything looking a whole lot different. No one really saw that one coming. That was a totally different deal. I know there's some Georgia fans who are not the biggest Stacey Searles fan, but that was a new territory. I don't think I ever thought Georgia under Kirby, this late in the game, would struggle that much on the offensive line, just because they recruit really well in the trenches, but they recruit well at linebacker, they recruit well in a lot of spots, but where they've always recruited extremely well and developed well is on the offensive line. They're putting dudes in the NFL draft all the time on the offensive and defensive line, but the offensive line wasn't there. And it wasn't a lack of talent. It was we didn't have the right collection of guys, and they could not all get on the same page throughout the whole season. And I think that's what's interesting to me, is that I think there's obviously an influx in talent at receiver this year, and I think there's a lot more reason for optimism if you're a Dog fan about where the receivers are going to be. But I would be a lot more. I think I'd be more concerned with a raised eyebrow at what happened with the offensive line a year ago, because it wasn't a talent issue. Like, you had dudes a season ago. You're going to have dudes again. It's the same offensive line coach, same offensive coordinator, same scheme. So I'm very curious what looks different on the offensive line if they're able to diagnose what the heck happened last year. Because receiver, you get it. There wasn't a lot of talent there. And when you lost Ra and Colby, like, it was bare bones stuff. Offensive line was not the case. Like, they had 5 stars everywhere. They had blue chippers everywhere. They were starting blue chippers everywhere on the offensive line, and it was a disaster at points. So I think that's the weird, surprising part of where Georgia's going into this offseason, and just kind of diagnosing that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's not the same level. Like, Georgia's still, recruiting a good enough level at the offensive line that there's no excuse for it being as bad as it was a year ago. But I think it has dipped a little bit in terms of there might not be a 5-star every year in it, like there was for consecutive seasons there for a while. An Amarius Mims, an Andrew Thomas, Isaiah Wilson type of guy, Jamari Sawyer. Like, there were a lot of those 5 stars. And last year, there were some injuries. Like, Tate Ratledge missed time, Jared Wilson missed some time, Ernest Green missed some time. So there were some injuries, but like you said, there's still a lot of talent. Like, Dylan Fairchild is projected to be one of the top interior offensive linemen picked in the draft. Like, you were getting really good play at left guard, like, individually. Jared Wilson, like, I wouldn't be surprised if the guy is a day 2, day 3 draft pick or something at the center spot. And we know Tate Ratledge, I mean, that guy was a preseason All-American coming into the season a year ago. But, at the tackle position, like, Monroe Freeling was a 5-star, and he was good at times. A lot of people remember that Notre Dame game. But Xavier Truss, that was a guy who was, he was a senior who's experienced, but he was a guy who he got a lot of grief from the fan base. Maybe you do get a more talented guy in there this year, and it looks a little better. Maybe there's less injuries this year. I think it's definitely a position of concern. Don't get me wrong. So, to answer your first question, I probably do feel more confident in the wide receiver group, simply because Noah Thomas is a proven guy, but that room is still not super deep. Like, Zachariah Branch, as good as he looked at times as a true freshman, he didn't really do that much a year ago. 10 yards a catch kind of guy. So, does he have that ability to be a big play threat? He seems like it. But yeah, like I've said before, like, there are some question marks on this Georgia offense for sure.
Yeah, but we shall see. It's going to be an interesting year, and I mean, who knows at quarterback? I mean, it might be an open competition. It might not. We assume Gunner might not be. I mean, they were in the Deshaun Purdy, Fernando Mendoza sweepstakes. Like, are we sure they're out on a veteran quarterback altogether? Because it's a young room with Montgomery, Puglisi, and Stockton. So I don't know. It's going to be a really, really interesting offseason for the Dogs this spring, because like the Vols, they got to get a lot of stuff figured out on the offensive side of the ball in 2025. Speaking of the Vols here, Matt Green, I thought this was pretty interesting from Paul Feinbaum, who kind of went to bat for Tennessee and where they're going to be in 2025. And he had this to say on a recent episode of his show, where he said, quote, this is from A to Z Sports, who wrote about what he said here. Zach Reagan. Most of the experts think Tennessee will go through somewhat of a transitional year, having lost so many key players, explained Feinbaum. They still have Nico Iamaleava. The schedule, I don't think playing Syracuse, that game is in Atlanta. I mean, Syracuse is a much improved program, but I don't see a lot on there. I think they can manage Syracuse, that Georgia game that is early. I think the games that would worry me are Georgia, at Alabama, and at Florida. Other than that, I think Tennessee can handle that schedule pretty well. Here's what's interesting is I'm curious who thinks it's a transitional year, but I do think Tennessee is they're in a really weird spot in terms of like the reload versus the rebuild type deal, because it's not like you're in year 5. Like you can't really rebuild now. Like you can't tear it down. Like previously before the portal, like fans understood that like, okay, you lost a big graduating class. Like you're going to fall back a little bit. Like you've got some talented young guys, but you're going to have a dip here to kind of restart the process to get back for a lot of programs. Like, yeah, Alabama was a little bit different, but fans understood across the country that like when you have these special seasons with these upperclassmen, that before the portal, you're going to dip back a little bit closer to reality. You're going to drop some wins. Doesn't mean you're going to go 3-9 or 4-8, but you're going to drop a little bit. I don't think you can really do that in 2025 with where Heupel has taken the program, with how much he's won, winning 70% of his games, most successful coach since Fulmer, that with the portal, and Barnes is dealing with this in basketball, where you lose Dalton Connect and you're like, oh man, we made the Elite Eight with the best player in the 21st century at Tennessee. All right, great. Enjoy it. And it's like, no, we want to build off that. Now you got to get a 1 seed. Now you got to get it, and you got to replenish it. And you go out and get Chaz Lanier from North Florida. You're extremely active in the portal, but you have to reload. Like you have to keep trying to be the best year over year. When you get to that mountaintop, when you break through, I think it's really hard to take a step back and then not have the sky is falling panic among the fan base. Like, oh, what's happening to the program? That all being said, I do think it is a fair question to have about what kind of season Tennessee's in for. Because on one hand, their schedule's still really good. Like their schedule, the floor of this schedule is 8-4. That's the floor. It also depends on like what you look at in terms of transitional year, because I could argue last year was kind of a transition year in terms of what the offense was, and the defense obviously taking a step forward a season ago. But the offense...
That's actually... go ahead.
Well, I just look at last year and I was like, you can kind of make the case where you're starting a young quarterback, a redshirt freshman quarterback. Redshirt freshman quarterbacks don't win national titles. Like it's kind of like one of those things where you kind of did take a little bit of a step back last year. Like you won 10 games, but it was 10 games because you had a really nice schedule. You had a top 10 scoring defense. You had a Heisman-esque running back, and you kind of played like you play a style, and you've raised the floor in a way where I never thought last year Tennessee could win the national championship at any point this past season. Not once. But I think there were some people...
Are you saying that going into the year, though?
Oh, yeah. Like, they were not winning a national title. They're not in the blue chip ratio. Like, they're going to be in it, I think, this year. But no, I didn't think they were going to win the national title. Like, Nico Iamaleava was the only underclassman quarterback of the Power 2 who made the CFP. That was it. Like, it's an older quarterback's game. I don't think you can go into next year being a transitional year, because this is it for Nico. Either Nico balls out and goes to the NFL draft, or Nico's hitting the portal because the season didn't go the way it was supposed to, and he had back-to-back kind of okay years, right? Like, that's the world we live in. Like, I have a hard time believing Nico's going to sign up for 3 years of so-so production. They're going to win a lot of games because the floor is really high, and I've argued, and I wrote about this with getting Tim Banks back, like, the linebackers are going to be better. The defensive line, like losing Pierce, I don't think is a big deal. Like you have 4 4-star and 5-stars behind him. Like they're going to be okay on the defensive line.
Losing Pierce is a huge deal, though.
It's not a huge deal, though. Like if you watch Tennessee games all year long and you see who's behind him, and Rodney Garner is going to be fine. Like they're going to be okay. Pierce was really good, but I'm telling you, Joshua Josephs is a really good returning 4th-year player. Jordan Ross is a 5-star from the previous class. Caleb Herring's a 4-star #1 player in the state of Tennessee on that side of the ball. Like they got dudes. Marion Dye coming in. Like they got bodies. They got options. What I'm saying is like Tennessee's gonna be okay. And that's the best. They've gotten the most amount of production. Byron Young, right before James Pierce, he goes to the Rams and he's been great in the NFL. Tennessee does really well at developing Leos on that side of the ball. Not worried about that. Corner, they're gonna be really good again. Safety with Brew Carter and company, they're gonna be really good again. Defense is gonna be elite. The offense can't be in a transition year. Like, it has to be all systems go. Like, you can't look at it this year as a transition year, because then it's like, you really messed up the Nico experience if it is.
Yeah.
Because what's the point? Like, you can't have a transitional year when you have the biggest recruit quarterback in 25 years. Like you can't do that.
And for all those Tennessee fans that listen, that think I'm just hating all the time, this is what I've been saying since last year. Because you kind of hit on where I was going to go with it. Like, what is the definition of a transition year? Like, is the transition year like as a fan base? Like, what is the context that he's speaking? Like, the fan base should be cool, just knowing this year's going to be, just slightly not as good as last year was, and we're going to go back up and be good in 2026. Is that the concept that he's going for, at least?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends, because I think he's citing in this just kind of what other people are saying. Like Feinbaum, like from the article, and Feinbaum said this on his show, according to Zach, it just seems like it's more of like what people are saying around. I mean, look at Schleybaugh. Schleybaugh has Tennessee at his preseason way too early rankings. He has him at 19.
Oh, so that's not what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Schleybaugh has him at 19. Like, if Tennessee's the 19th team in the country, that means they're like, what, 8th SEC team? I'd have to pull it back up. But, like, that's a middle-of-the-pack SEC team if you're 19th at the preseason right now. So, that's a retooling. That's a transitional year, and I just don't think the timeline doesn't make sense. But part of it is, like, I struggle with this because I think the defense is going to be even better than it was a year ago. Like, Tennessee's defense is going to be really, really good. And I'm really excited about Edwin Spillman next to Arian Carter. I'm really excited about Brew Carter in year 2. I'm really excited about Idris Farouk potentially replacing Will Brooks at that safety spot. I'm really excited about the interior of the defensive line with David Hobbs, and you got Isaiah Campbell on the strong side. You're bringing Bryce Neeson back. Like, you got dudes. Like, they're gonna stop the run. They've been elite at stopping the run. Tim Banks gave up 20 points in the regular season once, Matt Green, to an offense. Once. People are like, oh, Vanderbilt.
Who was that?
It was the Georgia Bulldogs. And on the road. That's it. Like, that floor, when you have a defensive coordinator that had allowed 20 points or more once the entire season, and you're bringing most of your guys back, and you've recruited really well and developed really well on that side of the ball, it raises your floor so high. So I think they can, like, it's kind of one of those tricky things when you talk about transitional, because I think the defense just raises the bar so high that they're going to have an opportunity to not make it a transitional year. But the only way it's not is if Mike Matthews is a star, Nico makes a big jump. David Sanders is plug and play as a true freshman, like Wanya Morris and Darnell right before him at Tennessee. And there's no gap at center because you've had Cooper Mays for 4 years now, and you're going to uncharted water. Center, it's a scary thing, but you have 4-star William Satterwhite and 4-star Max Anderson, hopefully right there. But the offense has to be a whole lot better. It's a transitional year if the offense is only slightly better than a year ago, because I think you can argue last year was a transitional year because you couldn't win a title with that offense. That offense wasn't anywhere close. You can't win a title if you're in 12 personnel all the time because your tackles can't block. You can't win a title if your biggest identity is running the football up the middle over and over again because you're getting light boxes. You can't win a title like that. So I look at transitional year from my definition is the offense good enough to win a playoff game or two and to see what happens? And if not, then they've had back-to-back transition years with Nico Iamaleava at quarterback, and that might be all they get with him. And that's just kind of wild because I would not have predicted that before he came in.
Yeah, don't knock that 12 personnel, sir. If you got Brock Bowers,
I knock it when you have
Washington,
Josh Heupel's offense. It's a little bit different with Georgia and what they're running versus what Tennessee's running when they're going 12 personnel.
But yeah, I guess transitional is just kind of being used as a word to say a down year, an ebb and flow, if you will.
Yeah. Tennessee can be better and win less games next year.
I think the definition of transitional year is you're kind of building something to 2026, and it's the building year felt like the first year Nico was starting, which was 2024. So
right.
Yeah, it feels like this was kind of my argument for seeing what Nico could do in 2023, and then I kind of changed my tune. I was like, okay, maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe Joe Milton clearly was the number one guy. But yeah, now that you've got 1 year of Nico, I think 2025 feels like a year that if Tennessee wins less games in 2025 than they did in 2024, there's going to be legit kind of maybe not panic setting in among the Tennessee fan base, but the heart's going to start beating a little quicker. Like you're going to be a little more unsure of the future of Josh Heupel and how good this program really is, because like you're saying, this is year 5 now. We just went to the college football playoff. We're supposed to be here now. We're supposed to be arrived. So if they take a step back with the highest ranked quarterback recruit they've ever gotten, at least since Peyton Manning, that doesn't bode well. Like maybe the next guy, obviously he's a big time recruit too, and maybe he's the guy that does it. But it'll starts to make you feel a little uneasy.
Yeah. And you wonder, like, what does that mean for Faison, Brandon? I mean, you brought in George McIntyre. Like, one of the differences this year that I think is interesting. Last year you had your backup was a walk-on in Gaston Moore and a true freshman in Jake Merklinger. So you had 2 scholarship quarterbacks in the roster. So you had to be kind of more protective with Nico. But you've got 4-star true freshman George McIntyre. You have 4-star redshirt freshman Jake Merklinger. So now you have 3 scholarship quarterbacks now on the roster. You got to open that thing up. Like, Nico's got to run the ball. You can't play scared with Nico. You can't play like, I don't know if we can't afford Nico to get banged up, whatever. Like, Nico's got to run, and Nico has got to, you got to play aggressive with Nico Iamaleava in 2025. And I think he has all the talent in the world to be really good. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum where I think he was solid from the second half of the Alabama game on, but solid's not going to be good enough with how much they're losing. You don't have Dylan Sampson to rely on in the second half anymore. It's going to be a rotation back there. A lot of unproven guys. Like, you've got a lot of unproven young guys at receiver. Like, you can't just be solid next year if you're Nico. Like, Nico's got to be really, really good. And that's just part of the deal. Like, when you're a big-time recruit and you have these big-time expectations and you've been in the program now for 3 years, like, I think it's fair to be like, look, man, like, we need a Heisman-type year out of you. Like, that's part of the deal. If Tennessee wants to avoid a transition year, Nico has to be closer to a Heisman guy than he was a year ago. And I think it's very possible. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he breaks through and has a gigantic season for Tennessee. He's got all the talent, but that has to happen, like, for it not to be a transition year, because the defense is going to do their job. Like Mark Wahlberg in The Departed. I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy. And that's what the defense has been looking at the offense for the last 2 years. Because they've just, honestly, the last 4. Tim Banks has gotten better and better. Scoring defense was like 80, 90th or something in 2021. Goes down to 33 in 2022. 20, I think it was like 23 or 22 in 24, in 23, and then top 10 in 24. So it's gotten better every single season. And I think this year they were leading. I think they're bringing a lot of talent back, and they're pretty loaded on that side of the ball. So the defense is going to do their job to avoid it. It's kind of wild, but it's going to be the offense and Josh Heupel and what the new wrinkles they have to make sure that you're not in 12 personnel and relying on a running back to survive in second half of big games.
For sure. And this isn't the NFL. That's why Ohio State going 10-2 felt as disappointing as it was. It's like you're not going to play 12 evenly matched teams in your schedule. So Tennessee has basically those kind of 3 games you circle, like Georgia. Not that all their other games are easy, but outside of Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, I don't know the big, like, super, like, there's not necessarily a potential ranked team in the conference outside of that, right? I mean, maybe Oklahoma's ranked or something. I'm not sure, but it's not the toughest schedule. So if you lose one more game than you did last year and go 9-3, well, then now you've probably lost to the 3 best teams you played, the 3 teams that were worth anything. And so you still don't know really what the team is, or are you just a complete pretender sitting out here? Even though they might be 9-3 and ranked number 15, it just might feel a little more hollow.
I think you're spot on, and I think that is something they're going to have to work on all offseason to prevent, man, because they're going to have to, like I've said all offseason, now continue to pound this drum. The thing that makes 2025 so interesting for the Vols is Heupel, to get back to the playoff and to really break through. You have to win one of the 3 games you haven't won at this point. Doesn't mean he won't win any of the 3. It just, the reality is you either have to beat Georgia at home, and beat Georgia, you're 0 for 4 there. Win at Florida or win at Alabama, you're 0-2 there.
So he hasn't won at Florida, hasn't won at Alabama, and hasn't beaten Georgia.
Yeah, and those are all 3 on the schedule this year. So you got to do one of the 3.
Big.
Yeah, you got to do one of the 3. It's doable, but you have to do one of the 3. great teams win one of those games. Like, you want to be elite, you want to be a team that can win a national title, you got to win one of those games.
Yeah. And Georgia's got 2 cupcakes to start the year, so I imagine they're going to be preparing all off season for Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee can't do that because they got Syracuse in Atlanta to kick things off. So I think it's like a 14-point line coming out. So I think they should be fine, but you're still going to get ready for Fran Brown and company.
Oh, speaking of Mercedes-Benz news, did you hear the Mercedes-Benz for next year? Georgia Tech going to be played on Black Friday again.
Yeah, that's
they
good.
Just announced it a couple hours ago. Yeah.
Is it during the day or at night?
They haven't announced the game time, but hopefully it's at night. But yeah, it's gonna, because next year is the one at Mercedes-Benz, and they just announced it's gonna be Black Friday as well. So I'm here for it. That Black Friday game was a lot of fun last year.
Why are we doing it? I mean, we know where we're doing it, money, but what are we doing?
I'm with you. Bobby Dodd Stadium, great place to watch a college football game.
Yes, it is, 100%.
I'm all for disrespecting the Jackets, but credit where it's due. Great place to watch a soccer game as well. When Atlanta United was playing down there.
Something else I want to throw out your way here, Matt Green.
Soccer match, I guess that's what they would say.
On the pitch, Matt Green. USC. I thought this was wild. Like, Football Scoop does a great job. I love checking them out every day. They cover it all. Division 2, Division 3. Like, for the real football sickos, Football Scoop is fantastic. And this caught my eye because it's not like I'm in the weeds in terms of, okay, who are all the different teams' GMs, but it's a growing part of this sport. Like, Matt Lombardi is now the GM of the North Carolina Tar Heels. Some programs have one, some programs don't. They all have director of player personnel. Like, they're all different verbiage, but there are GM types in a lot of these big time programs now with how much money is involved, the portal, everything else. But it's interesting that USC pulls Chad Bowden, who is the general manager for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who just went to the national title. And if you read the piece and read up on Chad Bowden, like, this is kind of a brutal loss for Notre Dame because of how intricate he was to this Notre Dame national title run. Like, in the article, it says, quote, "But Bowden had assembled the majority of that roster with an NIL budget that, per multiple sources of direct knowledge, ranged between $7 to $8 million, less than half that of Ohio State's outlay for its title-producing team." Bowden keyed Notre Dame's 2024 editions of quarterback Riley Leonard from Duke, Jordan Clark from Arizona State, Jaden Harrison from Marshall, Rod Hurd II from Northwestern, Chris Mitchell from FIU, and RJ Oben from Duke. I mean, he retained key guys like Riley Mills and Xavier Watts. Like, this is a huge deal that USC and Lincoln Riley kind of pulled that I think a lot of college football fans are not going to pay that close attention to. But with a sport that's growing increasingly like the NFL, USC stealing the architect of a national championship team, I think is a huge deal, man. Like, he's super young. I think he's like 30, but this seems like a brutal loss for the Irish and for Marcus Freeman, because like, these kind of positions are growing in importance, Matt Green, and kind of a quiet big win for Lincoln Riley, who needed a quiet big win because they're treading water at USC, and it's a rival. Not only that, like, USC and Notre Dame are rivals. So this is kind of a sneaky big thing. I don't know. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, this is wild. And seeing this guy's expected to make $1 million a year as the GM. Like, I think he said he was making $275,000 at Notre Dame. So yeah, I mean, it's big, but it's like, this isn't, oh man, this isn't Theo Epstein. It's not like he's the GM has like that level of control. These guys, the budget, where all the NIL funds are allocated and all that stuff. And losses, I don't know if I see that. Is it going to make that big of a difference?
I think it's a big difference because I think part of it is with the portal in particular, you've got to be so quick, right? Like you've got to be on your P's and Q's because it happens quick. The flurry of moves in the portal, like you've got to have your T's crossed, your I's dotted. Like this is the kind of deal. If you have a really good identifier of talent and someone who's leading the organization, like Ole Miss, when you live in the portal, like Ole Miss does, to put together a championship roster, you got to have smart personnel guys who are grinding the tape, working relationships, knowing how to handle NIL at your school, knowing who to go after, who not. Like, and they also have to have the full trust of the coaching staff, right? Like the coaches and the GM and player personnel guys, they have to be on the same page. But I think it's a huge win if you can find someone who matches your vision and can help you so that you can focus more on the X's and O's with Lincoln Riley at USC. And it makes his life a lot easier. Takes some pressure off where it's like, I trust this guy who just assembled a championship roster. Like if he says, let's target here, here, and here in the portal, get on this. Like I can get this guy for X amount. I can get this guy for this. And let's put them here. We're going to put them here. What do you think? And then it's like, oh, good. That's off my plate. I trust this guy who's a national championship assembler of talent. You know what I mean?
How much credit are we giving him for the portal moves that Notre Dame made a year ago? Are we giving him all the credit? Is Marcus Freeman responsible for this? I guess maybe. I don't know how teams are being built in 2025, and there's you have a guy that's just straight your portal guy, and you're identifying the targets and everything like that. Maybe if that's what he's doing, that's what he's bringing to the table. I would think at the end of the day, Marcus Freeman still deserves a lot of the credit in assembling that class, right?
For sure. But it's clear that some of it goes to, at the very least, to Chad here. Like he's doing something right, man. Like the fact that he is cited here and he's getting a mill to go from Notre Dame to USC, like he's big. And the article talks about it. Like, you have Courtney Morgan, who's the GM with Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. He's making $850. Texas just extended their guy, Brandon Harris, $750. Oregon's Marshall Malchow. He's up there with Dan Lanning. I mean, the big dogs are doing it. And it's like Lincoln Riley, whatever you can do to help turn this ship around, because, I mean, we're multiple years now of 500 football at USC, and it has not gone, I think, the way that either of us expected it to go for Lincoln Riley to this point in Southern California. But I think it's a home run. If you can get a guy like that, like it can't hurt. There's no way this guy cannot hurt and help USC. Now, I will say, it kind of sucked you're getting him late in the process post-portal, because he would have been nice to have like a month ago, close this one before the season ended, because that would have been helpful for USC, because now the spring portal isn't a big deal at all. But yeah, that's something I actually thought about too. I was like, man, USC could have really used this guy like a month ago.
Yeah, I see a job listing on ZipRecruiter for an NFL general manager in the state of Georgia. So might put my name up for that one. I don't think UGA has a ZipRecruiter, a GM on their staff. So Barton Simmons, I think he was the first one. It really changed the game now. It's to be a pretty much standard operating procedure for most teams.
Yeah, and like I said, like there are different guys and they have different titles and stuff like that. Some are going to call them GM, some aren't. But there are a lot of people who are involved in that day to day. There's just too much with the portal and everything else. Just too many moving parts for the coach to be the guy seeing, identifying talent, bringing everybody. It's just those days are gone. Like you just can't. There's just too much information and too many guys to keep track of. Like you've got to have a pretty built out staff to make this all hum year in, year out. I thought this was interesting, Mac.
Like these major league teams that have scouting departments. It's like there's high school scouting departments, but there's also the scouts that are scouting the rest of the league and looking for potential free agents and things like that. So yeah, this is the world we're living in.
For sure. Grant Hughes at 247 Sports, he wrote an interesting piece this week. College football teams projected to take a step back in 2025 after key offseason departures. And there were some interesting teams on here that included your Georgia Bulldogs here, Matt Green. But when you go through his list of who might take a step back here in 2025, what did you think of this list? Because there were a lot of there was a lot of disagreements I had, and was kind of surprised to see who Grant cited here.
Yeah, I was surprised to see a few of these names on the list, like a Oregon or Boise State or some of these. One so the one I have at the top of my list personally that I agree with is probably Colorado. They seem like the
Hmm.
easy one just because like generational talent. I think it's safe to say with Travis Hunter, and then I imagine the best quarterback Colorado is going to have for a while with Shador Sanders, but maybe Juju Lewis is better, and maybe what's his name? Caden Salters.
Yeah, they
Is that his
brought in
name?
Caden Salter, which is weird because if you brought Juju, didn't he say like he wanted to start as a true freshman and then
That's what I
Caden
was
Salter?
thinking.
It's
So that
weird.
room's going to be competitive.
Yeah.
But yeah, Colorado just feels like they're most likely a 7. I would be surprised if they're like an 8-win team next year. I think that'd be a pretty solid season for them. But then Indiana, I think I agree with, just the schedule alone, like at Oregon, at Penn State, at Iowa. I think you got Illinois and Wisconsin at home as well. Like it's significantly more difficult than last year's schedule.
Well, the other weird thing too about they only have 17 guys in the portal. I mean, they bring back Jordan Seaton, their left tackle, who was really good as a true freshman. He was a 5-star. They bring in Martavius French, who's a really good linebacker. He was at Tennessee years ago. You talked about Caden Salter coming in there, but it's a little surprising to me that they have not been a little bit more active. And like you said, like just losing Shador and Travis Hunter should be a drop off. But you're also in the Big 12. Like I don't know.
And Shiloh.
Yeah, well, and also, I just kind of look at where the Big 12 is right now. Like, who are you certain of is going to be really good in the Big 12 next year, Matt Green? Like, I think Colorado kind of we didn't think they'd be this good.
That's fair.
Like, are we sure they're going to drop off? Dion's got this thing. I mean, maybe he's got this thing humming. Maybe Juju and or Caden Salter can get them to 9 or 8 wins in the regular season again. I don't think that's out of the question based on what they lost. Like, it's going to hurt a little bit, but I don't know. The Big 12 is not this. I mean, I could see it. Like Colorado kind of surprised me because I think there's absolutely a path of them going 9-3, 8-4 again.
No, that's fair. I think last year each of the top 8 in the preseason Big 12 predictions, none of them finished in the top 8 in the conference. So it's a crazy conference as well. So yeah, I could definitely see them being up there, but I would also just not be surprised if they're worse next year.
That's also fair. The biggest one to me though that surprised me because like Indiana, I think we're all like it's just the schedule is really nice. I mean, you're losing Curtis Rourke. I don't know. I have a hard time believing. Vanderbilt is one I definitely agree with. I think the schedule's brutal. I think they're going to take a step back now that teams in the SEC have a full season of tape on what they were doing offensively. And Diego I don't know if he can withstand that beating. Like Diego's fun, but man, he was beaten down by the end of the year. And I just think that kind of style in the SEC is hard for these guys to make it through a full year. Fun player, but I have my doubts on Diego, Pavia, and Vanderbilt in year 2. The one that I have the biggest just disagreement with is Miami. Like Miami has been strong in the transfer portal again. They've been strong on the recruiting trail again, and bringing in Carson Beck, like I don't know. Like I think that just I would be floored if they're not 9-3 at the worst again next year.
Yeah.
Like I think they should be in the ACC title game. Like we talk about this, like Miami for whatever reason just can't get over the hump. But Shannon Dawson's still their OC, one of the best play callers in the country. They upgrade at defensive coordinator this offseason. They fire their last guy and they bring in the Minnesota guy who's been really good there. So that should be an upgrade if their defense takes a step forward because they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball too. Like, I don't know, man. I think Miami's going to be really good again. I don't understand the Miami part of it because I think Miami's like a lock for 9 wins at least.
No, I'm with you, especially because like this team kind of underachieved last year. So like if they did what they were supposed to do and went 12-1 and won the conference, and it's like, okay, they might take a step back, but 10-3, like they should easily be able to do that. So, and I think, I think they should have been better last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are better this year and they actually win the ACC because I think they should have won the ACC a year ago. Like if the truly the best team in the ACC, if they would have taken care of business, like I think that was Miami. So no, I'm with you. I think that the expectations are essentially the same with Carson Beck. Oregon, just because they were perfect until the college ball playoff. Yeah, maybe they don't start 13-0 again next year. That's not necessarily a hot take, them taking a step back. that's not a real step back. But I mean, seeing Georgia on this list, I think makes a lot of sense. Like Georgia's schedule is going to be brutal again next year. It felt like they scratched and clawed their way to 10-2 and somehow found a way to win the SEC. Like as much went wrong for Georgia last year, it felt like a lot had to go right to find a way. Like you could have lost to Kentucky, you could have lost to Georgia Tech. Like you know, there's some of these games. You know, maybe you could have beaten Alabama at the same time, but you know, some of these games, you know, were not pretty for Georgia a year ago, and they're more unproven next year. So last year, like you were talking about, like with Carson Beck with the starting quarterback, just kind of a returning starter, you just kind of know what the floor is. I don't know that we know what the floor is on Georgia in 2025 so far. So I would not be surprised at all if Georgia was a 9-3 team, and they might be that team that, based on their schedule, like we had that conversation in this past year, that 9-3 might be good enough for Georgia to get in the playoff because they might face, you know, 6 top 15 opponents or something like that.
No, 100%. I think we're on the same page. Final one here. The you don't get it team of 2025 for you, Matt Green, that you're seeing a lot of just hype already starting here at the end of January. Who's the Matt Green you don't get it team for 2025?
Can I give you 2?
Yeah.
So the first one I have, it's to varying degrees. So the first one I have is the Clemson Tigers. Like, I'm not sure what makes Clemson just better than they were a year ago. Like they were kind of a hollow 10 and what they go 9-3 in the regular season.
Yeah.
1 and 10-3. So they end up 10-4. They have 2 SEC opponents in 2025. Clemson, South Carolina, and who am I blanking on? Who's the other one they play? I just had it written down. But they're 3-6 in their last 9 games. LSU, yeah, who they open with. So they have LSU and South Carolina next year, 2 potential top 15 teams next year. But they're 3-6 versus the SEC since 2021. So they lost to basically the 3 best teams they played a year ago: Georgia, SMU, and who was the other one? Or not SMU, Georgia, Louisville, and who was the other one they lost to in the regular season?
South Carolina.
Who was it?
South Carolina.
Oh yeah, South Carolina. Didn't play Miami. You know, it wasn't that difficult of a schedule, and they basically lost all their good. The SMU game was the one like good win they had the whole season. So they played Texas tough, but I'm not really sure what Clemson, what makes you look at what Clemson was this past year, where they were ranked number like 15 or something, but they won the conference, they got in the playoff. And all of a sudden you look at them, like I'm seeing everyone has them as like top 7, top 8 going into 2025.
Who's your other one?
The other one, only to the degree that they're being hyped up, is the Texas Longhorns. Like Arch Manning, I'm seeing 2026 mock drafts that have Arch Manning. Actually, no, I think this is a mock draft of any class. Like we could draft anybody right now, and like Jeremiah Smith was like top 3 or something. At Arch Manning, number 1. Like the guy has not played yet. Like we've seen so many 5-star quarterbacks not pan out and be 5-star quarterbacks. Like Quinn Ewers, people talk about like he sucks, and he didn't even almost beat Quinn Ewers out. So like, what does this say about Arch Manning if he couldn't beat out Quinn Ewers? Like he had his couple games too. Like Ewers left the door open, getting hurt, and Arch Manning got a couple games. As soon as he was healthy, Ewers was the guy again. So it wasn't even a real quarterback controversy. So to just have them as like so many people's preseason number 1 team, like, I don't know. I don't understand the Arch Manning hype for a guy who's really hardly played in 2 years now.
Wow. I agree with you more on the Clemson thing. To me is like, okay, what do you mean? Like, do you mean that they are the favorite to be the preseason favorite to win the ACC? Because you get Cade Klubnik back, who I think who's gotten better every year, and I think he was really good in that Texas game. Like, okay, I buy it. I buy their young receivers that they're retaining. They've got juice there at Wesco and Moore and company. I think the defensive line's gonna be really good. They hired Tom Allen, DC from Penn State, Final Four defensive coordinator. That's an upgrade. Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik will now be together for 3 years. That should be good. I think that is all fair. But the recruiting is still not good. Like, it's one of those, you look at this past class and look at where they're not going to win the national title. So I think it depends on, you don't get it. Like, I'm seeing some Clemson, they're a national title contender. It's like, no, Clemson's not. Clemson's not a national title contender. Now, Miami, I would say, is a national, they got to first win the ACC to get there. But, on paper and the way they've recruited and the way they've attacked the portal, Dabo's starting to get in there a little bit. They got the Purdue edge, and they're getting a couple guys now. But, they're not winning 3 consecutive games against SEC, Big Ten type of, it's just, I don't think that's happening. So it depends on what you're talking about with Clemson. It's like, do I think Clemson could be better than 9-3 and 10-2, 11-1 in the regular season? Do I think they could beat LSU in their opener? Yes, I do. Especially at home. Yes, they can win that game. Could I see them 11-1, winning the ACC and being a top 5 seed in the CFP? Yeah. Do I see Clemson in the national title game against, I don't know, Penn State or Georgia or Texas? No, I don't. So I think it just depends on how far people take this. Clemson's gonna be really good next year, because I think Clemson will be better.
But even 12-1 though, from what they were a year ago, what makes you think they're just considerably better than they were last year? Because they retain their
guys. I really like their staff. Their staff is really strong. Dabo's staff is strong, and the ACC just sucks. So I don't know. The schedule is just pretty nice, and you get LSU at home. You get SMU, who's really good. You get them at home. You get Florida State at home. I don't know. I think it's just a pretty nice schedule for them.
Yeah. No, I could see that for sure. And just remember,
I'm also not going to be the one to go against the Manning thing. All of it's just Manning. That's the reason that he's getting the preseason #1 Heisman guy. It's who's going to be the one to be I don't think this Manning is going to be the one. I think this is the Manning that busts. Who's going to be that guy? Who's going to go out on that ledge?
Before we move to Texas, I just want everyone to remember, before the Bo Nix and Cade Klubnik comparisons eventually happen, just remember where you heard it first. They're gonna talk about it. Only maybe just because it's the number of starts. What is he gonna be, a 5th-year starter or something next year? He's been 4. There forever.
Yeah.
What is he? 1 year as a backup, then 4 years starting.
Yeah.
Just remember where you heard the comparison first. It'll inevitably happen.
Maybe. I think. But that's not a bad thing. Bo Nix starting NFL quarterback, Cade Klubnik might turn into a first-round quarterback next year.
I just want my credit. That's all, sir.
Okay, I got you. We'll cite it this fall. We'll cite it on the podcast here, Matt Green. The Texas thing is, I just think they've recruited at an extremely high level. Now they're replacing a lot on the offensive line. We'll see, because their offensive line was really good this past year. But you get CJ Baxter back. Remember, they were torn apart at running back before the year, and we're on their 3rd string running back by the time the season started. So I think they'll be good there. That will help Arch with the first-year quarterback or first-year starting. Arch has flash. It's not like we haven't seen him. Ian Boyd had a really good piece at Inside Texas talking about and it got me a little energized here about Arch Manning in Austin. Matt Dream.
Juices flowing.
The juices were flowing a little bit, because the touchdown that he scored, it was a QB zone read, right? The game against Texas A&M where he keeps it and goes down the left side and gets banged in. That's not been in the offense. Quentin Ewers isn't running that QB zone read. It just knowing when to keep it off the edge and trying to get the when to pull it and when not, and then go around the corner. That, he had a really good kind of historical arc of the QB zone zone read for quarterbacks at Texas in the 21st century. Vince Young was obviously the best at it. Vince Young won a national title doing what Arch can do, and he's not Vince Young, but he is very mobile. And he has legs. He's really strong. Colt McCoy did it a little bit, and he has all these great videos and GIFs on it. But Sam Ehlinger was running QB power, and you saw it. He got really good at Texas. But Texas quarterbacks in the 21st century who are really good with their legs and kind of do that QB zone read stuff. And the amount of talent around them, it's good history. Colt McCoy and Vince Young, both in national championship quarterbacks at Texas. So, and again, he's a Manning. I'm not going to doubt
also
it. I think
what was his name? Swoops.
That
was a big time 5-star. It didn't pan out at all.
How long was he there though?
I'm not sure, but I'm just
saying. He'll always have that
we're
Notre Dame game
this
at home.
guy to Colt McCoy and Vince Young, the 2 greatest quarterbacks to ever play at Texas. So, let's just pump the brakes. Let's see him, because it's not like if he flashed, if he truly flashed,
But I
He would've
mean, do you
beaten out
really
Quinn
think he's not
Ewers.
going to be good? Do you really, in your heart of hearts, don't think Arch Manning's just going to be really good?
I mean, it kind of feels like the Nico situation. Like, he actually had the opportunity to like win the job over Ewers. People like, especially the fan base, was very unsatisfied with Ewers like most of the season. Like, and that's the other thing. Like, do you think the fan base knows more than Steve Sarkisian does? The fact that he never even really almost took the job from him, and like everyone is just like, oh, the key to the Georgia SC championship, we're gonna see more Arch Manning. Oh, the key to this Ohio State game, we're gonna see more Arch Manning, and you just never really did. Like he was never like a key to the offense in any of those big games down the stretch. So it's not like Tim Tebow was running out. He was like a legit third down quarterback, like part of the offense, like as a freshman. Like, I don't know. It's strange that this guy would not play for 2 years and all of a sudden he's the best quarterback in college football. Like that, we haven't seen that happen very often.
But I'm not even saying best. Like, it's just the situation is so good for him. That schedule
No, that's
is
true.
really nice. Like the situation for Arch is just, it's all, and like the Nico thing, it's like, it's not the same. Like Nico had a bad offensive line last year. Nico had bad receivers.
In
like
terms of when he wasn't playing, like when he's the big time 5-star that wasn't playing, it's like maybe there's a reason he wasn't playing. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. Like, and you saw Nico play, and it's like, okay, well, he wasn't a superstar when you first started seeing him play. So I just think we have to temper the expectations. Also, maybe I'm the only one. Maybe I'm taking crazy pills. But was Texas that good this year? Like, Georgia was a super flawed team and basically shut them down both games they played. And they didn't play a bunch of difficult games. Like, this team played in their 13 games prior to the playoff. They played one team that was ranked, that finished the season ranked, and that team beat them both times. So it's just interesting to me how we think, well, now with Arch Manning, this team's going to be so much better. Like, I don't see that. Like, they could still be a top 5 team or something. It's just they're being talked about like they're number one now that it's the Arch Manning show. And I'm not saying they're not going to be a contender next year. I don't see them just being head and shoulders better than they were a year ago. Maybe I'm taking crazy pills. They didn't seem that great for getting all the way to the semifinals. Like, Arizona State low key should have beaten them. Like, if a couple calls go a couple different ways, Arizona State wins that game. Like, I don't know. And Clemson, a flawed Clemson team, gave them a much better game than any of the other teams got in the first round. So I don't know. I wasn't that high on Texas basically the whole season. They didn't score against A&M and the 2 games against Georgia. They didn't score 20 points in any of those games. So it's not like their offense was just killing it and it was so good that, you know, we're not going to see Arch Manning play. It's like the offense was kind of, it left something to be desired at times, and we still didn't see much Arch Manning. So for him to come in and just all of a sudden be the best player in the country, which is kind of what he's being hyped up as, I don't know. I'm skeptical of that.
I'm skeptical of that. I'm not skeptical of Arch being good. Like, Arch is gonna be good. I'm just not gonna ever think that one. Arch Manning's
and
really
that's why it's varying degrees. Like, I'm not saying Texas isn't gonna be legit next year, but I think for the hype to be real, Arch Manning
he just has to be
win.
better than Quinn Ewers, and I think he's gonna be better than Quinn Ewers.
But what makes you so confident that he's going to be better than Quinn Ewers? Like, the guy didn't play at all over Quinn Ewers.
Hold on. I'm going to spell this out for you, Matt Green. It starts with an M, and it goes A, N, N,
So just because he's a Manning. He's not even Eli or Peyton's son.
Cooper
here.
was a good player. Don't sleep on Cooper. Cooper before he had to retire. Cooper can ball too,
I
man.
am going to sleep on Cooper, all right? We got 3 other great Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the family. I'm sleeping on Cooper.
Can't sleep on Cooper, man. You can't sleep on Coop.
Yeah.
I mean, if you doubt Arch Manning at your own risk, I think he's.
That's
really
what
good.
it is. I think if Arch Manning is not a Heisman finalist next year, he will be disappointing because unfortunately, that's where the.
But what if they win a national title?
Yeah, I mean, if they win a national title, then obviously things worked out. But I think that doesn't necessarily mean he was the key to winning it. You know, obviously, there's varying degrees to what I said, but I think the whole part of the Heisman campaign, it's like a multi-year campaign. He's got the name recognition already. He's probably preseason is probably first. He's probably number 1 in the preseason Heisman odds.
I think he is actually.
Like, it feels just like the Nico hype from a year ago, where it's just like, can we just pump the brakes? Can we see the guy do it first? Because who was it that he played against? One of the games was a cupcake, and then one of them was Mississippi State. And they didn't even tear it up in that Mississippi State game, if you remember. Like, that game was like a 13-3 or something at halftime. Like,
Garrett Nussmeier is slightly ahead of him.
Okay,
that's
so
it.
I'm just saying, let's pump the brakes on Arch Manning.
I think that's fair, but also just like I'm not ever thinking Arch Manning in Texas and where they're at. Texas can be good again. They're going to be in the Final Four again. What are we doing?
They'll be good. They'll be really good. But I'm just saying, the amount of just like, I don't know, number one Heisman talk. Like, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. Quinn Ewers doesn't get enough respect for how good he was, I think, personally.
Interesting. Okay. I think Arch can be better, but we shall see, Mac.
We shall see.
That's all I've got, sir. Next week, if you want to do for next week's show, we're going to do more theme stuff this spring and everything in the off season here and our season reviews and stuff like that. So, let me know. And also in the comments, youtube.com/ChaseHomespodcast, email us ChaseHomespodcast if there's any off-season college football talk that you want us to dive into. We're always happy to take suggestions and all that good stuff as well. But Matt Green, that's all I've got, sir.
Yeah, that's all I got, man.
All right. I will talk to you next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.